Welcome to AI from the Trenches. This is where we get to interview people who've been involved in implementing and leading change using AI. So we're not talking about the technology, we're talking about the impact of the technology. And today I have an amazing guest with me, Rich Brown from Shopify, who has a fantastic story about how he's implemented AI to help with customer feedback across Shopify. Welcome, Rich.
Thanks for having me.
So, so tell me a bit about your background, your role in Shopify, your kind of how do you go about doing feedback before AI happened? What was the backstory to this leap into the AI world?
Yeah, so I came to Shopify in 2020, and I came in as a designer. So we have product designers, product managers, data scientists, engineers. And I was working on how do you translate your store? So how do you go internationally? And interestingly, the way I got my job was I'd written down all the things that I'd found hard doing it for myself as a merchant. And right time, ended up on the right desk. And it was like, come and do this.
Yep.
And what I found in my time as a designer, which was 4 years at Shopify, was we're right down in the details, really passionate about the right solution. But we talk a lot about being merchant obsessed, but actually the designers and some of the product managers weren't spending lots of time with our customers, understanding their situations directly. So sometimes it was the case that things were being designed that were imaginary circumstances or quite hypothetical things.
Yeah.
And what I felt in that situation, particularly there was, being in Europe and a lot of, if you're a UK-based merchant or a Europe merchant, you're selling to very often neighbouring countries, which have very similar rules but slightly different.
Yeah.
I always felt that it should be easier to get to the real experience. But what we were doing at the time, you'd organise user interviews. We'd had quite a manual process that existed around this, which was what we'd call support ticket dives.
Okay.
So you'd have a particular topic, and at that point, we were able to have a kind of basic keyword search, and you'd pull up a number of tickets, and then someone in the team that I went on to join, called PSN, Product Support Network, would go through each of those tickets and try and work out the themes and present them back.
Yeah. So quite a manual process of just doing lots of searches and
extremely manual. And an example is I was working on a product that's called Managed Markets that used to be called Markets Pro, and we were trying to find out what are the challenges merchants have with managed markets. And I was going through all of the deactivation feedback and manually categorizing each one in Google Sheets to produce a pie chart that says it's this many people that have an issue with not being able to print their own labels. It's this many people that have an issue with not being able to change their fulfillment supplier, etc. And that was, days in the making. But what you're trying to get to is what's the key problem to solve.
Yeah.
And that got me thinking, there should be a better way. I really cared about the user empathy side of it. Obviously, design is like a big spectrum from what are we making and why, right up to the polish of the buttons.
Yeah.
And I felt like I wanted to go after that problem, and I felt that at that time, and this is early last year, which seems like a long time ago, but wasn't. AI was starting to make that like more could happen there. So that's what got me interested in it.
Yeah, yeah. So the backdrop of the hype and everyone getting excited about new technology, new experiences, etc. And you were sort of like thinking, maybe there's something in this.
Yeah, so AI came quickly in our work, and it was as mind-blowing for us as it was for anybody else. So I remember one of the things that I had done was create a test store, an example merchant called Show Devil that would enable anyone within Shopify to show their feature, that kind of thing. And my lead at the time showed me how he'd been doing something similar, but he'd generated these kind of LED trainers out of nothing, and they had a description that matched it.
So you mean image generation you're talking about here?
Yeah, and this is early days. He was using Midjourney and generating some text. And the first time I saw that, it is completely mind blowing. Like, how on earth has that been originated?
Yeah,
and so there was this embrace of it pretty early on, and this is before the AI memo came out, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But yeah, people were doing things, and it was clear that a tide was rising around us, but no one was quite sure what it meant for all the different roles.
Yeah. So you built this thing that's turned into, I think, Scouts, you call it, yeah?
Yep.
And tell us a little bit about how you went about that, how that happened, and how you went about the process of building things. Because I think one of the interesting aspects of your story is that the kind of, you're not sitting there with like a team of 100 developers ready to go and build stuff for you. That's not your situation at all. So give us a bit of perspective on how you went about it and what you experienced.
Yeah. So I'd seen an opportunity to move to this team product support network, and it aligned with that goal. I thought of we should make it easier to have merchant empathy, and I'd done a spec design for what the world might look like. We have a tool internally called Merchant Frustrations, which is where for years support teams have been marking down product gaps. Mm-hmm. And I did a bit of design work reimagining what Merchant Frustrations might look like. And the last bit of the demo, the last 20 seconds was, and maybe in the future, AI is advancing so fast, we'll be able to have natural language requests, and you could just ask, what do merchants find hard about managed markets? Not really thinking that was within the bounds of reason. And I did move to the team, and we started looking at what would a unified insights tool look like, because there was two main things that sat around it, which is feedback doesn't just come from support tickets. Every sales conversation, every Reddit thread, Twitter conversations, they're all surrounding the product and challenges that our merchants have with it. Yeah. So could we unite those? And the other was AI feels like it's able to cluster things pretty well. Yeah. So we did a proof of concept where we had at the time an internal chatbot called VaultBot, and paired up more than one source to it. And that was the first kind of eureka moment of actually you can get a pretty decent answer combining more than one source of feedback.
And that was proof of concept. So give us a feeling for how much effort was involved in that.
So this is December last year, and we were looking at first party versus third party. So could we build something ourselves versus could we use a third party tool to meet the goal? And we've got a couple of heuristics internally. One of them is we shouldn't use a third party tool unless it does things 10 times better than we could do ourselves. Yeah. But that heuristic's written by an engineer, and if you're not an engineer, it's quite a different reality when you need to get these things made. Yeah. And at the time, Google had just brought out Notebook LM, which is one of the best products of all time. So the odds look long of doing it ourselves, but at root, what we're trying to find out is in natural language, could you query feedback and get a good answer back? Yeah. And two, people with technical knowledge within the PSN team, but not kind of full-time developers, did it by, at that point, they were writing the code, but it wasn't that challenging. It was, you were adding a different source to VaultBot, and then VaultBot was running its chat engine over it. So they were able just to kind of copy some files. And so that got us to the proof of concept. I suppose the big breakthroughs came a couple of months later, where one, Toby, the CEO, put out his memo saying, we're AI first, and that should permeate all roles. And two, we came across MCP servers. And so MCPs were able to pull together different sources of information and create a single queryable tool. Yeah. And that was perfect for what we were after. And by that time, on the back of the memo, we were all given access to vibe coding tools, basically. So
things like Cursor and Claude Code, those
exactly that.
Yeah.
So Cursor and Claude Code, they weren't limited to engineers. Anyone could do it. And at this time, all throughout this year, it's been this mad race to make amazing things.
Yeah.
And anyone in Shopify is empowered to do it. And there's this sort of stack that surrounds it. So we have something called Quick, where anyone can host a website without having to worry about anything other than just dragging a folder across. We have it built into our performance evaluation. It's just a base expectation that that's what you're doing. And so we were able to vibe code an MCP server.
Okay.
By using Cursor, but also one had been created for what's called the data portal internally. So we had a model to work off. And the theory went, if we could get 4 or 5 sources as MCP tools, this might work.
Yeah.
And it really did. So we were able to pair together different feedback sources and have it turn up where Shopify worked. So kind of interesting thing about this product is it didn't have UI. It was something that showed up in Cursor. It's something that showed up. We use LibreChat, which is like our internal chat system.
Yeah.
And we can even make it turn up in Slack, all of those things.
Yeah.
So
a conversational interface, no sort of graphical design or anything required for this, just text chat.
Just for the first phase, yes. The first phase is I ask a question, what do merchants find hard about translating? And the tools will run and it will collate an answer, and it's always sourced back. So you can always see the original conversation. And that's the first time that we've been able to combine what's happening in sales and what's happening in support and what's happening out on the forums and the partners. Yeah. And if you think up to that point, all of those different stakeholders have been trying to get in front of product teams to say, this is my issue.
Yeah.
And every person that's ever given that feedback assumes that someone's listening to it.
Yeah.
And it became possible here.
Yeah. Because I guess part of your challenge is the size of Shopify. The scale of feedback that you're getting is probably more than I could imagine. And so if you're some poor product manager sat responsible trying to find out the feedback, there's just this overwhelming tidal wave of stuff that you could search through.
Yeah. So the way we've gone about it is the first thing we shipped and the first goal was make the feedback available.
Yeah.
So give me a single place in which I can access the feedback from different sources. And that was really successful, and people were for the first time able to just not have to wait for a meeting, not wait for research to come back. You could stay late and just ask the questions. The second phase is nothing hits like video. If you see real pain of people using your products, people get into R&D because they want to solve problems. And if you see a problem presented to you on a surface you own, you go and do something about it. Yeah. And so the second part of it was we found that around 30 to 40 times a day, a merchant was uploading a video to a support conversation saying, I don't understand how to do this thing. And they were giving these perfect 1 to 2 minute narratives of the challenge that they faced, which were just living and dying in that support chat. But we were able to extract them. And then we also have a tool called Sidekick where you can have screen share voice conversations. Okay. So those 2 sources of videos are merchants explaining their problems. Yeah. And then, so the second part of what we did with Scout was Scout TV, which is to be able to index and catalog and make searchable all of those conversations. And we brought it back into the same MCP server. So if I'm in LibreChat and I say, what challenges do merchants have translating? I'll get the answer that I used to get, but I'll also get, and here's videos of it, which is like, would never have been possible previously. Yeah. And then the third part to it, where you're talking about product management overwhelm, is the number one piece of feedback we get is around quantifying. So how do you know what's the biggest problem? Yeah. And the LLM does a job of it. It kind of takes a sample of tickets and then gives you its percentages, but it's making it up on the fly and it's not always that accurate. But we all know that LLMs can state things with confidence and it makes it sound like something's really real. So the third part we're doing is working on quantification. Yeah. And the way we're doing that is starting with support tickets, every ticket that comes in, giving it a topic, which again is obviously by AI. No one's doing that manually, but we've got a kind of parent list of all the topics, and then the ability to keep it evergreen. So if we launch something new like agentic commerce with ChatGPT, that topic can naturally emerge. And so then coming back to Scout, if you ask the same question again, you'll now get a histogram represented of frequency.
So this Scout product and Scout TV, it sort of became a bit famous, didn't it? Tell us a bit about the kind of how it got on the radar, and how you've gone to be kind of famous in in the Shopify world.
So yeah, it's gone down well. I think at root it is a problem every technology company, or really any company, has, which is how do we get the flywheel right between the things that we're making and the people that are experiencing it, so that the next round's better. And the way it came about was we have there's a meeting amongst the senior leadership, and we knew that we were working on something interesting and wanted to get it on the agenda. And so we got an invite to the senior leadership meeting, and I presented what we're doing. And at that stage, we'd got the MCP working. I'd done a demo of what Scout TV might be like, and that was the first time I'd ever spoken to Toby, and we're really lucky. Got it very quickly. Got excited about it very quickly. And in that meeting, he did something that I didn't know was possible, which was he took what's happening in Vault, which is our source of truth for the work we're doing, and which has an MCP, and compared it to Scout, so that he came out with a table of where we are working on things, or where there's a mismatch between feedback and projects. And that was another kind of epiphany of just what's going to be possible here, which is we can narrow the gap between those things. We're working on what the feedback's about. So presented that, and that went well. And then we treated it like an internal startup. It was formal. That was the plan. We gave it a brand. We gave it a look. We presented at Summit, which is where all Shopify get together in one place in Toronto, and we sticker bombed everybody that was a mammal, and and it became like a running joke. Like, you guys heard of Scout? And so, like, I remember I walked in, and there's Kaz, who was our COO, who's now left, but he knew who I was, and then he pitched Scout in front of me to one of our distinguished engineers, and so there was this groundswell. And
so
then
it kind of went viral inside.
It sort of did inside, and then what happened was it also got presented to the board, and then I wasn't there, but Toby had said, I hear that he wanted this to be indicative of how we work, what's possible. And I think the board said back, well, then tell people. And so Toby tweeted about it, and Toby shared it on X, and people got this idea, and then we've tried to keep that momentum going, where we've again launched Scout TV on top of it. In the most recent earnings call, Harley mentioned it. Carl Rivera, our Chief Design Officer, has mentioned it on podcasts. And so, it's done the rounds. And I think part of what's interesting about it is that it wasn't an R&D team that made it. It was a team that the year previously wouldn't have been able to do it.
So this is a team that's not engineers. Am I right? Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
So give us a bit of color on what the team looks like, and because you're building what's essentially a product, and you described it as an internal startup there, right? And you had the stickers and all the rest of it. So it was kind of like a proper product.
Yep.
And yet you don't have an engineering team. So
correct. So the way it worked was I had a sense of what AI was enabling, which was something actually Carl Rivera articulated nicely at our summit, which is we're all now 7 out of 10 at everything.
Yeah.
Right? So you're a 7 out of 10 designer, 7 out of 10 engineer, 7 out of 10 at data, because you can just ask the system. And the skill set is moving to one of judgment and taste and quality. And that summit was like a remarkable atmosphere because it was the first hack days where everyone was actually making stuff. You weren't just waiting for the designer, waiting for the engineer.
Yeah.
And so now with people able to make things, I kind of realized if you pointed them in a certain direction, then you could make something where their combined value was worth more. And so we had people within the team, within Product Support Network, whose broad ambit is the two sides of how do we get feedback back to R&D to improve the product, and how do we prepare the support org for launches, and with support operations as part of it as well. And there are people in there who are quasi-technical, so they're doing SQL queries and maybe doing some basic data work, and people will know a bit of HTML and CSS. But essentially just set a goal of, I'd like to create a unified insights tool. I see these 7 streams of work, who's with me? And some people put their hands up. And then we kind of went as far as we could until you run into like real engineering roadblocks. So for example, authentication to be able to have the MCP server turn up in LibreChat. And so we had a bit of guidance. There's a guy called Topher Bullock who's pretty knowledgeable about MCPs, and he said, you need to do this in Ruby, not in Python. So take your Python stuff and have Cursor turn it into Ruby, that kind of stuff. And there's a bit of trust the system.
You didn't have to go out and get a Ruby developer then.
We didn't have to go out and get a Ruby developer. Yeah, and that's what's mad, which is, that same question 10 years ago would have been, £100,000 job. Whereas here it's like, tell Cursor to turn that into Ruby. And then that's how it worked. We had some guidance where you run into kind of the real hard stuff. But because we had Cursor and ability to test things locally, it was an opportunity for the more technical people within PSN to stretch themselves. But it was made possible by the fact that we'd got this set of tools in the ecosystem.
And it sounds to me like you had a team that was kind of has some aptitude on the technology, but their job wasn't heavyweight engineering. But they're kind of interested and had some background skills. But then they were sort of empowered because you had access to all these tools, and the organization, in parallel with your journey, the organization was getting, from what I understand, really quite excited about AI, and there was a big push right from the top with Toby, telling people to just get on with stuff. So and I know probably to some of the people out there listening, maybe working for like banks or insurance companies, where the idea that this kind of like team of novices could build a product sounds a little bit scary. So I'm guessing there is some governance around this. There is some enablement that sort of gives you the platform in order to get this ragtag team together to go and build something.
Ragtag team of ne'er-do-wells. So I suppose they're operating in the middle of a sandwich where underneath it is this ecosystem that lets people do work. So someone's taking care of the security and the data governance and the hosting and the tools and the ability to actually do the work. And above is a kind of layer of quality. And that's me really sitting there saying, Scout may be a dog, but I don't want everything to be a dog pun. This is serious, right? Like, and I was able to aim it and maintain quality because I was ultimately solving the problem that I wanted solved. So had a view on how it should come across. And then they're novices to building, but the but they're just focusing on the actual tools working. Because the ecosystem around them worked, and there's patterns to follow. So where we'd had a data portal, MCP, set of tools, you can recreate that, and you're taking these learnings onto the next thing. And people were stretching themselves. So, and that's how it works quite well, is that the novices, well, it's not the blind leading the blind, it's people that are wanting to stretch, who do have some guidance from people that have done it before, where it's required, and that's how we've managed to get quite a good setup. So a good example is with Scout TV. At the root of that is an Airflow DAG, which takes videos from wherever they live, puts them in a Google Cloud bucket, runs Vertex AI over it, and then produces a JSON that says, this is the video, this is what's in it.
Right.
And we've done similar things to that all around the business.
Yeah.
And so there were people to ask and do that. And I think what's interesting is the way that our team PSN has changed as a consequence, which is a lot of the problems that we're trying to tackle can be considered as something you can productize.
Yes.
So, for example, how do you get new support advisors up and running? Like, what's a great learning platform look like?
Yeah.
And we're now empowered to be able to build those things, whereas previously it would have been, pulling a third-party piece of software off the shelf and trying to customize it.
So that was because of the success you've had with Scale. That's given you the authority in order to go off and do other similar things.
Yeah, it's authority and it's momentum and it's excitement, right? So people like making things, and but it was not available to them previously. Yeah, and it's an amazing feeling asking Cursor to do something and it comes back, and that comes with its own set of risks, which is slop and people feeling real ownership over something because they've created, not because it's good. But that's where I think the new skill sets are going to matter, where it's less so can you write the code, and more so is this thing good.
I think that's an interesting thing, because there's positives and negatives about these tools, and I think if you've been a software engineer for 20 years, it feels a bit weird to suddenly be getting the AI writing code, but you're talking about an environment in which you didn't have these long-term engineers. You had people who had a bit of aptitude and a bit of interest, and the tools have empowered them to do things they probably couldn't have done without the tools. Yeah,
but also the engineers are the ones that are probably adopting this most, and data as well. But I think in any company, you've got like the frontline service that you're providing and the people building that, and then there's the support to that frontline service, which helps them go faster and higher quality. And it hasn't traditionally been the case that the kind of support line was actually able to make their own things and able to empower the frontline builders. And so that's the change, which is where we all start to be people that are able to build products. But as anyone that's ever done any kind of product or any startup knows, the success is by no means guaranteed. So you still fundamentally have to solve a real problem well.
Yes, which it sounds like you have.
Yeah, I hope so. It's a real ever-present issue of what are people saying about my product that can help inform the next iteration of it, and that's what we're going after now, which is big problems that wouldn't necessarily get R&D staffed, but will help those R&D staff do what they do. Example might be how do you help when you launch products? A lot of stuff comes with that, which is support readiness, docs, etc. And when I talked about that third stage of Scout, of being able to understand the topics of support coming in and being able to quantify it, well, we can now connect that up to training. So as new challenges for merchants start to emerge, we can make sure that we've got people staffed up and trained on it.
Right.
And that's all possible because we're connecting with AI dots.
So you mentioned a bit earlier, you sort of touched on the Toby email and this sort of like light the red touch paper and go with AI, and which I think was a backdrop to a lot of what you were talking about here. So you do want to give us a bit of tell us what the email was and the impact that had on the organization.
Yeah, so I won't remember the exact words, but they can be found. But the net output was, we're AI first and ask if this can be done by AI in the first instance. And at that time, we'd already had, it was already starting to become part of our performance system, and there were already people making amazing things. It didn't come as an enormous surprise internally.
Yeah.
But Shopify is something that's very much run by certain heuristics, certain principles. For example, thrive on change, make great decisions quickly.
Yeah.
The vision of make commerce better for everyone. They're all quite ingrained.
Yeah.
And then this was a mindset shift around asking, can AI help me do this faster and better? And yeah, you've got without doubt mixed emotions on that, which is it's incredibly exciting what's possible, but also slightly daunting that that you are having to outdo yourself essentially, and there is a reality that we are creating tools to do things that we would have spent a long time doing manually previously.
Yeah.
And so it was really empowering for people, but I'm sure it was, I'm sure it kind of caught people a bit blindsided as well.
I think there was a few things in that email, from what I understand, that I think there was this sort of cultural change, and the sort of way that you're being measured as well has changed as well. That your use of AI is now part of the metrics of what the organization is looking for in its people. So, how does that feel? What was the cultural impact of these words? How does it change the way that people work on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I suppose it became clear that the minimum expectation is you're using AI to help you do your job, and one of the other principles that Shopify espouses or cares a lot about is a growth mindset. And this was really AI being aligned with the growth mindset, which is to make yourself better. This is a tool to do that. And so a system of performance, which is called Mastery, was started to ask, how are you using this? And when I would talk to friends in other companies, the attitude was very different. And so some were very cautious about AI adoption, very focused on usage and which model was the right one to use, and making sure that it didn't get out of control, and even just a kind of high-level fear of where our information is going.
Yeah.
The situation in Shopify was very different. Was you're empowered to use whatever you want to use. It was almost like a token race, still, if you had an old model of GPT running on an old Google spreadsheet and it was costing a lot of money, you'd hear about it.
Right.
But as a general thing, there was conversation about what's the best model for this type of thing and that. And when Claude or when Anthropic or OpenAI launched a new model, people would talk about the strengths and weaknesses, and it's not just Cursor. We're using Claude Code or trying things out with VS Code, and so the way that it was presented to us is you have the ability to go and try these things to get better, rather than a kind of cautious adoption where you'd have to get everything signed off. And I think that kind of changes the attitude
So the sort of baseline expectation is that if there's a problem that which could use AI, that you would use it and you would go and use Claude Code and Cursor and all these tools, and that's kind of the expectation, rather than like in most organizations you'd need to go and seek approval and you'd probably get some odd looks because you said you wanted to vibe code something. And
exactly that. And so literally down to the Slack channels being created for people to share the stuff they've done. There's like revenue AI use cases, support AI use cases, and people are just sharing stuff that they've come up with, and then that's where you learn other things that other people have done that you can adopt. And it became part of not only performance, but when you'd have like a town hall, leadership would be talking about what they've done, how they've used AI, and it starts to turn it into a reflexive action, which is, let's say if you're naming something, it's a baseline expectation that you would put in, I'm looking for a name for something that does these things, and evaluate them there. And we're quite centered on a word which is toil, right? Which is what are repetitive tasks that take a lot of time, which are which could be automated away. Right? So that's that word is one of the words that goes around Shopify 100,000 times a day. Context is another one, and this concept of toil almost gives you, in one word, a rallying cry of removing it for your merchants, for people internally. What are you doing that is repetitive and mindless and low value? Right. And the association built up internally is where you spot toil. Right. How can you use AI to take it away?
Okay, that's interesting. So if you come up with something, you think, here's a piece of toil that I've spotted, and I think there's a solution we could build here. It sounds like you're sort of pushing on the open door, because
it's already the platform is there to accept that, which is beyond an assumption. It's an agreement that toil is a bad thing,
right?
And you're looking to get rid of it. And so that type of thinking of I've come up with a new way of doing these things is going to be really valuable. And so, for example, when revenue teams are speaking to to our merchants, people are making tools that make it really easy to know what apps that store's got installed, or understand what GMV band they are, and really inform that conversation. What was the last conversation you had with this customer? And so people are going after the universal problems and trying to make tools for it.
Yeah. So, I mean, it all sounds fantastic, and it does feel, to me at least, to somebody who works with a lot of traditional organizations, feels like you have quite a special culture that's been part of this kind of enable what you've done, that you couldn't, if you sort of parachuted into a very traditional organization, what you've done probably wouldn't be possible. But there must be challenges, and just thinking about some of those traditional organizations, I'd imagine some people there would sort of think this all sounds a bit mad and a bit sort of like they're all running 100 miles an hour, using all these exotic tools, vibe coding stuff with people who don't have a software engineering training.
Yeah.
Is there any sort of like pause for thought? Is there any sort of like, ooh, this is a bit scary? Any of how does that, the more cautious aspects, because you're dealing with customer data and transactions as well, so the privacy, security, etc. is obviously a big deal for Shopify. How do you handle that kind of stuff?
So on the first question of does it feel a bit like kids going wild, I think Shopify is an organization that's still founder led, and that founder is a very accomplished engineer, and it's also runs certain principles, and so we live up to those principles. So the senior leadership team, present unanimity, and they've got together and said this is the way that we're going to go, so that you have that license. You're still in a world where good stuff succeeds, bad stuff fails, right? Because that's just a sort of human truth. So if you did try and make as much noise as we tried to make about Scout and it didn't do the job, then ultimately you sort of embarrass yourself.
Yeah.
But so there's that. There's still the kind of natural laws of product.
Yeah.
On the second part of it, actually I can't remember. What did you say? My first break. You said
it's about the kind of like security and privacy and the kind of things which would traditionally stop people from doing stuff in many organizations.
So on the second part of it, around the security and the privacy side, the part of it is you're operating in what certainly feels like a walled garden. We're taught how to avoid prompt injections and things like that.
Right.
And yes, we're dealing with customer data, but we still have the things like, for example, if I want to go into anybody's store within Shopify, I have to get someone else to sign me in.
Yeah.
And so all the same laws as before applied.
Yes.
But yes, you're working in a place where we take kind of security and privacy really seriously. And what we're trying to focus on is the layer above that, which is how do we make these things clear and digestible and understandable. So to give a quick example of that is document verification can be a challenging thing. It may have come from us, it may have come from Stripe, it may have come from a national government, and we want to understand, what are the themes within that. And that's the type of thing where you're dealing with something sensitive, but AI is not broadcasting sensitive information. It's helping you digest it into small chunks that say, this much is about director's address, this much is about, the laws.
Okay. Fascinating. And just kind of wrapping things up now, just thinking, just one last question, that it seems to me the way that you approached this was like an internal startup. And you talked about stickers, I think, at one point, and you had this brand of Scout, which is a dog, and just give us a feeling for how you think that sort of like productized branding startup kind of mentality has been important in getting this thing to be successful within Shopify.
Yeah, so I come from a background of initially advertising, then startup, UX, product, and moved to this space. I'd always felt this problem around product feedback, but had a few past lives which were around trying to build successful products and brands. And so it was important to me to make this something that people could get hold of and really enjoy. And I worked with Kristen Brown, who's like my management counterpart, and she's exceptional at getting traction internally and getting the right people involved.
Yeah.
And so together we set out to treat this as an internal startup so that you had something to market, you had a marketing plan, you didn't just build it and hope they would come. But a story that goes with it is we presented to VP UX at the time, VP Design, Andrew Mangini, and this was our branding thoughts. We wanted to really land the idea so it was unequivocal, and we presented the brand as product feedback. And she smiled along and listened carefully and got to the end and said, we're in the era of agents. This is an agent. It goes out and fetches feedback.
Yeah.
I'm going to go so far as to say it's a dog. and so I took that and we looked at our names and thought, what kind of means go out and get information, but would be a suitable name for a dog? And that's where Scout came from. And actually, really, that was a big part of the breakthrough, because millions of Looker dashboards have been made to do this kind of thing. But we're turning it into something people can really rally behind. And we launched with all the emojis ready, the stickers, and this army of people just jumping into threads, talking about it. You want to pitch it right, but that was the approach very much, which is how do we get people behind this idea? So we had to make the idea single-minded.
That's a fantastic story, Rich. And I think just closing out on the idea that this was an AI agent, only it wasn't. It was a dog. and I think it sounds to me like one of the ways it's been successful, many reasons it's been successful, but one of those reasons is because you didn't talk about agents. You had this sticker with a picture of a dog on it, and you've kind of humanized and productized what essentially is a complex piece of technology. So
I think that's the thing is the old rules still apply, right? Which is you still have to solve a problem that people care about and want solved. You still have to be, clear and not say I'm all of these different things. Like the value proposition has to be clear, and you still have to market it and get adoption and all the things that you ever had to do back in the day. It's not just the case that you make something and away it goes. So yes, I think the right way forwards is keeping all the things we've ever learned about product principles and brands and all of those good things. But then using the AI tools to help get you there quicker.
And on that bombshell, the old rules still apply. Thank you.
There we go.